Well, as you've just mentioned, Mr. Shoush, Sudan will be holding not just one referendum, but two simultaneously. As we've discussed, the first referendum will decide the fate of Sudan, whether it remains united or becomes divided into North and South Sudan. A second referendum centres on the oil-rich area around the town of Abyei, which is in the middle of Sudan. Naturally, both the North and South lay claim to its territory. Voters there will decide whether to join the North or become part of southern Sudan if that new country is created. Professor Ryle, Abyei, why is it so important?
Well, Abyei is important because it's an enclave inhabited mostly by people of non-Arab, non-Muslim ethnicity. And for a long time, they've been promised the right of self-determination, whether to join the South or not. I think it's also important to note that the issue of Abyei has effectively been settled by an international court in The Hague, a judgment that was accepted by both parties, by the SPLM, by the government of South Sudan, and by the government in Khartoum. The problem is that the referendum in Abyei, which, as you mentioned, is separate from the main referendum in southern Sudan, but supposed to happen at the same time, has been, I fear, unavoidably delayed because of a failure between the parties to agree on the composition and chairmanship of the referendum commission. So nothing has started. The registration that has started in southern Sudan for the southern Sudanese referendum has not begun in Abyei, and that means time really is running out. But the obstacles that Sir Mohammed mentioned are not insurmountable, but they do require a cooperation between the two parties on agreeing the procedure for the registration and the referendum in Abyei.
So that referendum in Abyei, Mr. Benjamin, will it be delayed, do you think, or do you think it can go ahead at the same time as the other referendum?
First of all, what we have to say about Abyei is that Abyei in the beginning, since the Abyei protocol was signed, there was a clear roadmap which was agreed by both parties with all the international partners as witnesses to that agreement, that actually Abyei shall have the right of self-determination to decide whether to go back to where it came from, that is to go back to South Sudan. Because Abyei was transferred in 1905 by an administrative order. There was no any conduct of referendum. And that's how it got transferred for logistical reasons at the time to the north. Now we agreed at Navasha that, well, we can still ask the people of Abyei whether they are comfortably ready to stay in the north or come back. So the idea of who belongs, what Abyei belongs to who, there is no dispute about that. It is clear. Secondly, I think that the problem why Abyei referendum is delayed is because of the Maseria ethnic group that who are claiming to try and come and vote in Abyei. And we are saying, no, that is not within the terms of the agreement. The Hague is very clear of that. This comprehensive peace agreement on Abyei is equally, Abyei protocol is clear on that. So we believe Abyei, being a small place of about 9 Ngok Dinka nationalities, it can take a very long time to organize the referendum. It is not as huge as South Sudan is, where you're looking at an area bigger than Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi combined. This is a small district of which its referendum can be agreed. And as said by Professor Ryle, people of Abyei for a long time had been promised since 1972 that they were going to have a referendum to decide to go back to the south. So I still believe if we agree, and we need the goodwill on the side of the National Congress Party and the national government in Khartoum, we can hold it on time, absolutely. We still are hopeful up to now, since we have agreed on the framework on some post-referendum issues. I think we can resolve it because the issue of Maseria can be resolved within that context.
I'm interested to hear, Mr. Benjamin, that you say you think you know what's going to happen with the Abyei referendum, that they're going to vote to join the South. What's your view, Mr. Shoush?
I don't know. Nobody knows. The question is, there is a referendum is coming. A referendum will not have been so legislated either in the agreement or in the constitution if it is all settled one way or another. Therefore, if there is a referendum, that means there is a question which has to be settled by the people of the area, whether they're Miseria or Dinka. The question to say that all is settled and that's all, that means actually the whole idea of referendum becomes useless.
Now, is all of this over once we have the referendum, Professor Ryle, or is that actually when the real work starts?
No, I think definitely the real work, both at the intergovernmental level, assuming there are well, there are already two separate governments, but assuming that there are two incipiently separate states, and also at the local level, because we are talking about the fate of a large proportion of the population of Sudan who live along this border. It's a very important border. It's the home, as we've heard, of mineral resources, of a lot of the oil, but also it's the savannah belt. It's the site of quite a lot of rain-fed commercial agricultural projects. And there's a huge amount of movement across it in both ways, which is vital to the economic well-being of both countries. And I think, again, this is something that has been recognized in the framework, which is that whatever happens, these two countries are going to have a very intimate relationship, politically, economically, and culturally, because they have, of course, been part of the same country for many years. And that means that it's extremely important for the two governments to allow what is referred to in the framework as a soft border, so that people can move freely back and forth across it, which they need to do for their livelihood, migrant labour in one direction, pastoral people moving their herds to water in the other. It's also a very critical issue that although most of the oil in Sudan is in the south, the oil processing facilities and the pipelines are in the north. Now, both governments are dependent on oil revenue, particularly the government in southern Sudan. And so they're interdependent. One has most of the oil and controls the land. The other has the processing facilities and can market it and get it to market. So they do depend on each other critically in that respect, which means I think perhaps that could be a good sign. I mean, this is a built-in interdependence which both of them will ignore at their peril.
Mr.
And
Benjamin,
I hope very much for the sake...
Yeah, Mr. Benjamin, can I ask you about a future state of southern Sudan? Because if the referendum does go that way, a very heady moment for your people, but this could be the moment of a birth of a failed state. You rely on support from NGOs, you have a small, very poor landlocked country. Is it a viable nation?
It is absolutely viable than any other nation on this planet Earth. There is no doubt about that. The challenges which are there are not humanly unsurmountable. They could be resolved. But to come in on the issue of the fact that that we, the government of South Sudan and the SPLM, why we are discussing the issues of post-referendum issues, the issues of citizenship, the issues of bilateral trade, the issues of sharing of wealth, the issues of international aid, the issue of security arrangements, is basically that we would like to see a strong nation remains in the north. The issue of a failed state really is not in southern Sudan.
Okay, Mr. Shoush, can I ask you about your relationship with a new country? Sorry, Mr. Benjamin, can I ask Mr. Shoush, your relationship with a new state of southern Sudan, if one comes into being, is this a friendly neighbour for you, or is this a new country that you want to strangle at birth?
I don't think there is anybody in the Sudan, either in their writing or the political arena. They do not believe that it is extremely important. There should be an amicable separation, if it has to be a separation, or if the agreement is on separation. What is now want to be forced upon the northern Sudan is that they should accept certain things which should be left to the new government in the north, or the mother country, to decide the question of citizenship, the question of rights of various things between the two. These are matters, is a matter of state. This has to be decided later. We, in the northern Sudan, I don't think there is anybody who believes there should be a kind of a problem between the north and the south, whether they are one or divided into two. The question is what is going to be forced upon the north to accept certain things which are not accepted by other countries. Once a country is separate, then it has its own sovereignty, and therefore the arrangement of its people in the other country, in any other countries, Northern Sudan or Egypt or England or anywhere, it has to be decided by the sovereign state in which the countries are. So it is not the question of an amicable, but it is what amicable is in the mind of the leaders of the South.
Well, thanks to our guests. It's been a fascinating discussion. Our guests in Juba, Barnaba, Marial Benjamin, in Doha, Mohammed, Ibrahim, Shoush, and in London, Professor John Ryle. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments. What do you think we should have discussed? Please email us, insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.